So today we're going to be going through every single survivor in Dead by Daylight. This is going to be a pretty big boy video, so I will be trying to get through every single survivor as quickly and as informatively as possible. I am going to be ranking them all based on their teachables, and this is all going to be based around my experience. I am a solo queue player as well, so if there are other perks that you think are better with survivor friends, then let me know down in the comments below, because I might underestimate them or overestimate. And if you do see a survivor that you think is not deserved in that tier, then make sure to shout at me in the comments below. And let's get started with Dwight. Now Dwight, I would say, is a very good character. He provides great support to your team, and he's a great character if you enjoy doing generators. His perks consist of Leader, Prove Thyself, and Bond. Leader, being probably the weakest one, is still very useful as it increases the speed of doing stuff by 25%, except for generators. But of course you have Prove Thyself for generators if you're doing generators with someone else. And then lastly, Bond is an extremely powerful perk as it provides information to yourself on what other survivors are doing, and it's a very good solo queue perk. And with that being said, I would definitely put Dwight in A tier because all of his perks are pretty damn useful. Up next we have Meg Thomas, and she is the distraction character of the team, and her perks definitely represent that, being the most effective perks against killers. This consists of Adrenaline, Sprint Burst, and Quick and Quiet. Adrenaline is one of my favourite perks because it provides a free health state and it gives you a free Sprint Burst, but only when all the generators have been done or the hatch has been closed. So this could potentially save your life quite a few times if you like distracting the killer. Sprint Burst is one of the community's favourite exhaustion perks, so I don't really need to talk much about this perk, but it's a really easy to use for new players and it's pretty good in general. And then lastly, Quick and Quiet, a pretty niche perk, but definitely can be very useful with Dance With Me. So I think with Adrenaline and Sprint Burst being in the same character and making a huge difference in game, I'm definitely going to be putting Meg in S tier. You can't go wrong with getting her teachables. Oh boy, here we go. Claudette is next. Now Claudette is the medic of the team, and now a lot of beginners actually choose this character, and personally I would advise doing it, but the big factor of playing Claudette is not only that you cannot see her to save your life, is the fact that she has self-care. Now I'm not going to talk much about self-care because I've already done that on this channel, but let's just say self-care can be a trap for new players. But is it a good perk? Yes and no. I would say it can be useful in certain situations, but I feel like if you can trust your team a lot better, then it's not really needed. But it is definitely a useful perk. Along with that, she has body knowledge and empathy. Body knowledge makes self-care a lot better by increasing the speed and increases the speed of healing others as well. So it's definitely very useful indeed. And lastly, empathy is just a poor man's Bond in my opinion, except you can see injured survivors at pretty much infinite range apart from huge maps. And so I'm going to be putting Claudette in B tier, and that's because self-care isn't too useful, but it can definitely be effective. Body knowledge is always a helpful perk, and empathy is just it's not fantastic. So B tier, you can't go wrong with having her teachables, so definitely not a bad choice. Jake Park comes next, and he is the survival guy of the group. His perks are very hit and miss, let's just say. He's not that good. His perks are Saboteur, Calm Spirit, and Iron Will. Saboteur is not really helpful unless you're with survivor friends. You can break hooks, and it's not all that. Calm Spirit, completely useless, let's be honest here. And Iron Will is the hidden gem of Jake. The Spirit and other high tier killers rely on sound a lot, and if you can make no grunts of pain, that is obviously fantastic because a lot of us are injured half the time. So Iron Will is definitely a hidden gem. With only having one really good perk, I think it's safe to say that Jake belongs in C tier. If it wasn't for Iron Will, he would be considered one of the worst ones back in D tier, but obviously Iron Will does save his bacon. Nia, oh Nia. Nia is the acrobatics and the sort of flexible one of the group. She has urban evasion, streetwise, and balanced landing. Streetwise is a pretty decent perk, reduces the item consumption rate, and for your team, which is always very nice if you play with survivor friends. Urban evasion, urban evasion. Now this perk is good, it is a good perk. It's the way that people use it, and that makes me want to hate it so much. There is a time and place for urban evasion, but it seems like a lot of players don't know how to use it. However, if you can use the perk effectively, then it is pretty decent. It's one of the strongest stealth perks out there. And lastly, we have balanced landing, another exhaustion perk for when you fall at a distance, giving you a free sprint burst, and this can be a lot more effective on maps like Haddonfield, but it is a kind of weaker version of sprint burst in my opinion. So where does she belong in the tiers? I'm going to definitely say that she is B tier. There's definitely nothing wrong with her perks, and she definitely belongs in like a mid tier. Now, Laurie Strode is next. Now, this character is all about survival as well, and let's just say her perks are quite annoying. If you want to annoy a killer, Laurie is the one. She has Decisive Strike, Objective Obsession, and Soul Survivor. Straight off the bat, Soul Survivor is just not really worth it. It only really works with the Objective Obsession. There's no real reason to bring Soul Survivor unless you want your teammates to die. But Objective Obsession means you can see the killer at most ranges, and obviously they can be very annoying. And of course, the infamous Decisive Strike. Now, Decisive Strike is still a very powerful perk. It gets you off the killer's back if they tunnel you or they down you within 60 seconds. Just by looking at Decisive Strike and its effectiveness and the way it can distract the killer for much longer, automatically puts her in A tier. Soul Survivor may be useless, and Objective Obsession isn't all that, but it does provide some good information with survival friends. Decisive Strike is still a strong perk. I'm sure some people might put her in S tier, but let's be honest here, Decisive Strike doesn't always work. Up next we have Ace, and let's just say Ace is just not that good. He's the luck survivor, so he has perks all based around chance. He has Ace in the Hole, Up the Ante, and Open-Handed. It's safe to say that all these perks are pretty much pointless, apart from Ace in the Hole. Ace in the Hole is one of the few unique perks that he has, which is that he can get an add-on from a chest. So when you get an item such as a medkit, you get a nice bandage with it maybe. And this perk's really good for players who have pretty much done everything in the game and they just want to farm for stuff. So Ace in the Hole is a very good perk. However, none of the perks actually help your teammates. They don't really do much. Up the Ante just gives you extra luck, which is really unlikely to get off the hook anyway. And Open-Handed is an okay perk. They have buffed the perk, so it's now up to 16 meters now instead of 8 meters. And that means that perks like Bond or Kindred is now boosted up a lot more than it was before. So does that mean that he's kind of worth taking? If you bring something like Bond, well, that's up to you. However, this perk is okay to bring now. And so, with the recent buff, I am going to be putting Ace in D tier. I would put him in E tier. However, I feel that Open-Handed could potentially be rather helpful. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and put him in D tier. Good job, Ace. You made it. Up next, we have Bill. Now, Bill is a character that is amazing against really bad situations. This is shown in his perks, which is Unbreakable, Borrowed Time, and Left Behind. Now, people in the community swear by Unbreakable still, and honestly, I can never really get it working. However, if you can actually use this perk, it is a very powerful perk. And that's because it stops the killer from slugging, which is a very common tactic used by killers. The other perk, Borrowed Time, is also a very, very strong perk and is considered a meta perk because it stops killers from tunneling. This gives the hooked survivor a free hit and is in the deep wound status effect, which means that they can potentially get out alive. I think that with a mix of Unbreakable is automatically going to be putting Bill in A tier for sure. Feng is next, and her perks are, I would say, very beginner friendly. Her perks are Alert, Lithe, and Technician. Alert is an okay perk. It tells you where the killer is when they break a pallet or a breakable wall, and you can see them for 5 seconds. It's okay, it's good to know where the killer is. However, it's not really needed. Lithe is another exhaustion perk, and it's a pretty decent perk because it means you can activate it whenever you want. So when you vault something, you get that free sprint burst. And lastly, Technician is to stop generators exploding if you hit the wrong skill check. And this will give you a regression penalty to the generator. It does have a noise reduction of by 8 meters, but most of the time, other survivors get on that same generator and then it becomes useless. So with Lithe and Alert being okay perks, I'm going to be putting Feng in C tier. I feel like Lithe is a pretty decent perk and Alert is kind of just a handy perk to use, but it's not that essential. And Technician is kind of pointless, so I feel like she fits nicely in C tier. My boy David is next, and he is a very unique character. He is the hard lad of the group, and he definitely represents it with the very infamous perk No Mither, or No Mither, however you want to say it. This is a very pointless perk, and it's almost like playing Dead by Daylight on hard mode. This is pretty much ruining your chances of survival a bit, and is also crippling your team a little bit. So, you don't really want a perk that really does that. Dead Hard is his next perk, which is an exhaustion perk, and honestly, it is my favorite exhaustion perk. It is a very strong way of looping a killer for longer, and I personally like it because I can use it whenever I want to. And then lastly, his very unique perk, We're Gonna Live Forever, which is essentially a blood party streamer when you get 4 stacks of this perk. This is by taking a protection hit or saving someone off the hook. Now, this is a question for you lot. Do you think because We're Gonna Live Forever is such a unique perk that he deserves to be an S tier? Now, from a gameplay point of view, We're Gonna Live Forever doesn't actually do anything in game. So I'm actually going to put him in A tier because I stand strong with Dead Hard, and I don't fully know whether his Blood Point perk is really worth that S tier. Write down in the comments below what you feel about it, because I'm always interested to hear. Quentin. Yeah. He's terrible. His teachables are so pointless. Yes, unfortunately, this beautiful man is at E tier. I'm going to quickly run through his perks. He has Wake Up, Pharmacy, and Vigil. Pharmacy is really good if you want to farm for medkits, but it only works once. Wake Up, you can see the auras of the gates. Not all that, and you can open it a bit faster. Kind of pointless. And Vigil, very, very situational, and only when you need to bring it if you bring something like an exhaustion perk. But overall, pretty damn pointless. Sorry, Quentin. David Tapp. Now, David is another sort of objective sort of character. He has Stakeout, Detective's Hunch, and Tenacity. Stakeout is great if you're a very generator-focused player. However, it doesn't really make a huge difference in game. Detective's Hunch is great if you want to break totems, including chests, generators, all that good stuff. It's a pretty nice utility perk. And lastly, we have Tenacity, which means you can recover and crawl away faster. So unfortunately, because he doesn't really make a huge impact in game, I'm going to be putting Detective Tapp in D tier. Up next is my favorite character, Kate, and Kate has not got the best perks. However, she does have one underrated gem, which is Dance With Me. Dance With Me works really, really well with Quick and Quiets that we looked back before, and this allows you to not create any scratch marks for 3 seconds after performing a fast vault or leaving a locker. This perk has a nice combination, of course, as well with Head On, and this means you can stun the killer and escape without him even knowing which way you've gone. I really enjoy using this perk, and it does have some nice combinations, but apart from that, the other 2 perks are just not that good. Boil Over is a perk that can help the killer when you're struggling, so that isn't very good. And Windows Opportunity, I would say, is only good for new survivors. However, for the more experienced ones, it's pretty much useless. So unfortunately, with that being said, I'm going to be putting Kate in D tier. Adam Francis is next, and yet again, a character that is quite underwhelming, let's be honest here. The only redeeming perk that he has that could be maybe slightly competitive is Deliverance, and of course you only activate Deliverance when you unhook someone safely. But of course if you can activate this, then it does save a lot of time for maybe another survivor to come and get you. So if you are with survivor friends, then it is a nice perk to choose. Diversion is just the meme perk, let's be honest here. It kind of works against not very good killers and new killers, but in general kind of a waste of time, and it's just a bit of fun. And Autodidact is way too unreliable. Sometimes you don't even get all your tokens for it to be effective. And so yet again, I'm going to be putting Adam Francis in C tier. He's okay, but he doesn't really bring anything much to the table. Jeffrey Johansson, or Jeff. Now, for some reason on the wiki, it says he's a quiet artist, but if anyone's ever played as Jeff, you know how loud he is when he's injured. So I don't know where that's coming from. But the perks are Breakdown, Aftercare, and Distortion. I thought that Distortion was quite a nice one. Now what this perk allows you to do is not be seen if, for example, the killer has barbecue and chili. This is really, really nice. But unfortunately, 3 tokens it's not that great. I feel like if it had more, it would definitely be a lot better. Aftercare, yet again, is a pretty decent perk. When you heal someone, you can see someone's aura with an infinite range, which is really nice, but it does deactivate after you are hooked. And lastly, Breakdown, you can break a hook for 180 seconds when you get unhooked. That could be fun with a sabotage build, but nothing else apart from that. And yet again, I'm going to be putting Jeff in D tier. He's meh, he's nothing too special. Now Jane, on the other hand, I will say might be a little bit better than other survivors in this list, and that's because I feel like she's quite underrated. She has Head On, Poised, and Solidarity. Now let's look at the big perk, which is Head On, which is an exhaustion perk that stuns the killer when you jump out of a locker. And yes, this means you can save someone off the killer's back if you have the right timing. This is a very fun perk to bring along, and obviously works well with Dance With Me and Quick and Quiet, all that fun stuff. So you can make some nice combinations with that perk. Poised is, I think, quite underrated as well. It gives you 10 seconds without creating any scratch marks and could potentially get you out of chases. This is only activated when someone does a generator, so you don't have to do it yourself, it just has to activate within the game. And lastly, Solidarity speeds up the time of healing by 50% if you heal another survivor first before they heal you. This is okay, but rather situational. But looking at the perks, I can definitely say that she is a nice survivor to pick, and I'm actually going to be putting her in B tier. Oh, Ash. Ash, you've had so many changes in your time in Dead by Daylight. The only good perk that he really brings is Metal of Man, and even then it's rather situational. If you can get 3 protection hits with Ash's perk, then might be rather helpful, but it again is quite situational because it is pretty difficult sometimes to get your protection hits. I'm not even going to talk about Buckle Up and Flip Flop because they're both very pointless perks. So I'm straight up going to be putting Ashley in D tier, only because Metal of Man is rather helpful. Being able to take an extra hit if you're injured is always a very good thing to take. Up next is Nancy, and she's from the Stranger Things DLC, and her perks I feel is very, very underrated, and I feel sorry for all those Nancy mains out there. You guys have some decent perks, okay? Her perks consists of Inner Strength, Fixated, and Better Together. Inner Strength, I believe, is one of the best healing perks out there. Some people may disagree, but maybe say self-care is better or just get someone else to heal you. But if you break a totem and you jump into a locker for 8 seconds, you get a heal. It's always pretty nice to have. Fixated, you can move 20% faster when you are uninjured, when you're walking around, so this is quite nice to have. And you can see your scratch marks if you start running. This is very helpful to learn of how the killer can track you, and maybe you can use that ability to try and escape from the killer by using the scratch marks to your advantage. And lastly, Better Together is rather helpful in solo queues, personally. I use this perk occasionally here and there, and this is when you do a generator, then it shows the entire team what generator you're doing. Of course, this is information to your team, and that's always rather helpful as well. So, with all her perks being relatively helpful, I'm actually going to be putting Nancy in A tier. She's got a great way of healing. She can move relatively quick and do generators, so she's got a little bit of everything. Okay, so we're on the final 6 survivors left. If anyone's gotten this far in the video, I'm very surprised. But let's continue. Steve is the next survivor, and he's from the Stranger Things DLC as well. And his perks are, I would say, very situational, but can be useful time to time. He has Second Wind, Camaraderie, and Babysitter. Camaraderie, I would say, is pretty pointless because you're wasting a lot of time being near someone that is also on the hook. And if you're not saving them, then it's kind of a waste of time. I don't really see too much point in bringing this. Second Wind is an okay perk. It has been buffed from 30 seconds to 15 seconds. However, it does take a whole healing of someone else before this perk even activates. So it is quite situational, and it can only be used twice. And then lastly, we have Babysitter. When you unhook a survivor, the rescued survivor leaves neither scratch marks or pools of blood for up to 8 seconds. This is okay if you really want to get that survivor out of a situation where they like to get tunneled a lot. I could potentially see some use to this. I've never used it myself, and maybe it's something I will explore in the future. But looking at first hand, I would say is just an okay perk. So looking at all his perks, I am going to be putting Steve at D tier. I just think he's very situational in his perks. Up next is Yuri Kimura. She has Breakout, Any Means Necessary, and Lucky Break. These are perks I would say are not fantastic. I think the one that stands out the most that's quite interesting is Any Means Necessary, which means you can pull up a pallet after dropping it, and this is really cool. Like, on paper, this perk is a really cool perk because it means you can use a pallet again. However, a lot of killers just break them, and if killers just break the pallets, and especially the strong ones, you're not really going to be able to use this perk very much. So unfortunately, it isn't as good as it actually is in practice. Breakout is a fun perk to use, however I feel like it only works when there's communication involved, so if you are with survivor friends and you're doing the sabotage builds, this is perfect. I love running this with friends, but apart from that, on your own, it's way too situational. And then lastly, Lucky Break, it's just, you leave no pools of blood for 180 seconds. I mean, what killer really looks at the blood anyway, unless it's on Ormond? So, it's quite unfortunate. So, yet again, we're seeing a lot of survivors in this tier, but she's going into D tier. Now, Zarina. Zarina's an interesting character because I feel like her perks can be good in practice, but I don't know. I'm not too sure where I'm going to put her on this list, but I'm quite interested to hear your guys' opinions on this. She has For the People, Red Herring, and Off the Record. Now, For the People, obviously, is the most unique perk that stands out, I feel, and that means you can instantly heal someone, but gives you the broken status effect for 90 seconds. This, I feel like, is a fantastic support perk to bring. If you feel a bit more confident being injured, this is a nice perk to have. And even for me, I do bring this if I'm playing with survivor friends and maybe my teammate isn't as good. So I will bring For the People just to make sure that they get out alive. Red Herring is a pretty fun perk to use as well. It creates a noise notification on the generator when you jump into a locker. It's pretty much similar to Diversion, except it's specifically a generator. So I'm not too sure about that one. And Off the Record. Now, I have made a video about Off the Record. It is a fantastic perk to bring with Object of Obsession, because once you're unhooked once, then you have 80 seconds where the killer cannot see you at all, and you get free Iron Will in the process. So it's quite a nice little gem if you bring Object of Obsession as well. So where am I going to put her? I'm not too sure. I think I'm going to put her in C tier. I think her perks are relatively useful, so I think that is going to be my choice. Cheryl Mason from the Silent Hill DLC. Now her perks are quite fun to use actually. She has Blood Pact, Soul Guard and Repressed Alliance. All very interesting perks, all based around support. Repressed Alliance pretty much blocks a generator so the killer can't kick it. This is okay, I guess. I mean, I can only personally see this if they bring Pop Goes the Weasel, but it's not too great, personally, in my opinion. Blood Pact is a pretty nice perk to have. Basically, you heal your obsession, and you and your obsession both gain the haste status effect when you are within 16 meters of each other. This is just gets stuff done a little bit faster. It's a nice thing to have, but this will be fantastic in Survivor Friends. Lastly is Soul Guard. Now, Soul Guard gives you the endurance status effect, which means you can take another hit for 8 seconds after being healed from a dying state. So if you bring Unbreakable, this is a very nice perk to have, especially if they are slugging you. So her perks are pretty fun to use, but in-game, I've played these perks for quite a while, and I can honestly say that I'm pretty unlucky where I don't really get slugged very often, so I don't see much purpose in this. So I'm unfortunately going to be putting her in C tier. If you are a player where you do get slugged a lot, or they stick around the area when you're downed, then I will put her in B tier. But unfortunately, from my playstyle, she deserves to be in C tier. Alright, the final two survivors. We have Felix. I really enjoy Felix's perks. I think they're very helpful. His perks consist of Built to Last, Desperate Measures and Visionary. Built to Last is a really fun perk. Basically, once you use an item and it's fully depleted, within 10 seconds it charges up another 50%. That is fantastic. You can pretty much get a generator done within about 15 seconds, 20 seconds. This is a really nice perk to have, personally. And if you bring Streetwise with this, oh boy, that you will have a lot of fun. Desperate Measures gives you an increased healing speed up to 14% per person who is injured, hooked, or dying. This means you can get a nice healing boost, including bringing self-care. If you are a user of self-care, then bringing Desperate Measures is always really nice, and it also means you can heal other survivors. And I'm pretty sure you can stack this with Botany Knowledge as well, so this is really nice. And lastly, we have Visionary. Completely pointless, let's be honest here. You can see generators within 32 meters. Really good if you're a new player, or maybe you're in an indoor map. We're looking at a certain map where this could be kind of helpful. God, I hate that map. But in general, outside maps, just look in the sky and just see blinking lights. You've got your generator. But with Desperate Measures and Built to Last, I honestly really want to put him in B tier. But it's another one of those characters. I'm gonna put him in C tier, only because Visionary isn't too fantastic, and the Built to Last perk gets used up very quickly. But he's unfortunately sticking in C tier. Lastly, we have Elodie, the new character. I really enjoy her perks. I've recently been just checking out her perks, seeing how they work, and honestly, they aren't too bad. She has Power Struggle, Deception, and Appraisal. Appraisal is a lot of fun, and this perk gives you tokens essentially where you can look for a chest again. That's awesome. That is fantastic, because I usually find a chest and it's already opened and it's already been looted. Then you can rummage around and get a new item. This is fantastic for those people who are looking for a chest build. This is a perfect perk to bring. Deception. If you interact with a locker while you're sprinting, it creates a noise notification and then you leave scratch marks for 3 seconds. A lot of fun. It's a great distraction perk. And then lastly, Power Struggle. Once you've wiggled 25% worth, they're on the killer's back, then you can pull down a pallet if they go past one. This is very, 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 very situational, because most killers don't do that because they're in such fear that another survivor is behind that pallet. But occasionally it does happen, and that can make a huge game. That's a huge game changer. And so for now, because I really enjoy Built to Last and her locker perk, because 3 second scratch marks away can distract a killer pretty well, and that means I'm going to be putting her in B tier. I think you can't really go wrong with her perks personally. And that is my list. I'm not sure if a lot of people are going to agree with this, especially when there's a lot of them in C tier. But I feel this is definitely very strong. Unfortunately, yes, Mega is the only one in S tier. But let me know in the comments below, what would you change? Because I'm always interested to hear your guys' opinions. If you have watched the whole video, then I am absolutely amazed that you were able to hold out for that long. Thank you guys so much if you have. And if you have just skipped straight through to see the results, then GG's. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you did enjoy, then make sure to leave a like before you go. And I'll see you guys in the next video.